Welcome, everybody, to this live in-person episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast. I don't get to do this enough, so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be talking in person at the Times Higher Education Digital University's U.S. event here in Chicago. So my guest, Dr. Ann Clancy, I'll have you introduce yourself really quickly, just a brief professional background, and then we'll get into our conversation today, which is focusing on digital equity gaps in higher education.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as you said, I'm Ann Clancy, and I am a higher education advisor for T-Mobile. And what that means is that T-Mobile wanted to make sure that we're relevant in the space of higher education, particularly to help meet our mission about being the best at connecting people to their world. And so they recruited me from the higher ed space. So I spent about 14 years as a full-time tenured faculty member, and the last 4 of my years in higher ed I spent as vice president of academic and student affairs at an open access community college in the Chicagoland area. So my personal mission is really about access and equity in higher education. And so working with T-Mobile on digital equity is something that really matters to me.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of what's interesting is that obviously they're, national, global, company and organization that can sort of have that larger scale impact, but like appreciating your background of kind of sharing similar experiences and sort of involvements, to myself and I'm sure many other people listening. So if you do just kind of want to capture briefly like T-Mobile for Education, the work that they do to just try to help folks get their arms around sort of the work that they're doing in the space.
T-Mobile's pretty new to having a strategy and vertical around education. It was about 3 years ago, just at the beginning or right before the start of the pandemic, T-Mobile started a Project 10 Million. And what that was is it was for K through 12 students who were on the free and reduced lunch program to be able to have free access to high-speed internet through our T-Mobile network with a hotspot. And so thus far from that project in 2000, we've deployed about 5 to 6 million free devices to those K through 12 students. But T-Mobile didn't want to stop in just the K through 12 space. Again, like I said, the mission of T-Mobile is to be the best at connecting people to their world. And in order to do that, it also includes those who are, pursuing their personal goals and objectives through higher education, knowing that there is, the digital divide doesn't just automatically end when somebody graduates high school. So about 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago, T-Mobile decided to really think about strategy in higher education and how to expand this work to help campuses digitally transform, to really utilize the power of the 5G network that T-Mobile's invested so much in that expands into rural areas where there's not as much access to broadband as there should be, as well as to ensure that there is digital equity, or at least working towards it.
Yeah, and I know just when we were talking about doing this episode, just like kind of clicking in the sense of obviously like this was an issue before pandemic sort of uncovered it, and that it's continuing and just sort of like trying to normalize that, kind of making sure that everybody's on board and sort of the power of hotspot technology anymore. It's just this little thing you plug in and you're good to go wherever you are. And I use the hotspot on my phone all the time, and just thinking where it's that sort of little difference that it can make for a student who is trying to better their lives, and this institution who's trying to sort of kind of live up to the promise that they're making to that student of yes, come here, we will be supportive of you, but they're kind of almost getting stuck in the door. They can't even sort of get started or really be set up for success if they anymore don't have reliable, high-quality connectivity, whether it is the device or the network that they're connecting to. So, there's just a really kind of core part of this, and I guess just to kind of give sort of kind of the due diligence here of kind of laying out the context, what are you all seeing right now as sort of the context on the digital equity gaps that are happening in higher education, if you can kind of quantify it or sort of just kind of set the stage for the moment that we're in right now.
So we've pulled some data. There's not a ton of empirical data out there on this, but we do know that 50% of college students experience stress from unreliable internet or device problems. That in itself is a lot. Half of our students are having stress because of these access issues. That's a lot. We know that 1 in 10 or 2 million college students don't have access to a laptop for school. Of course, many schools provide, labs, computer labs. There's, computers in the library, but that doesn't meet the need of students who are juggling work, who are caretakers, and things like that. So that's 2 million students that may not be successful because of the lack of resources in order to do their work. And then, when we project about the data we have about students who face housing and food insecurity, which is 3 in 5. 3 in 5 college students face housing or food insecurity. Imagine what stress having to have technology and connectivity as part of their higher education to meet their goals includes. And so when we look at those data, we think about how might an institution, invest in their resources and in their strategic plan to help meet their equity gaps. To tell you a quick story, when 2018, 2019, when I was Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs, the college embarked on an equity plan. It was part of so we did a strategic plan, an enrollment plan, and an equity plan, and they all kind of flowed up into the strategic plan. But when we were doing the equity plan, we worked on, high touch, advising to ensure that students had what they needed. We wanted to have co-curricular education for English and math success rates. We invested time and energy to think about, first-year, first-gen college students and their experience, but we didn't think about digital, resources and digital equity as part of that. And I look back and I was so remiss to have missed that. But the truth is that there weren't data on those pieces. It wasn't part of a high-impact practice that we were looking at. And I would argue that we really need, the higher education community really needs to look at, especially as, we talk about digital transformation in higher education. So we talk about distance learning, we talk about hybrid, high-flex learning, that we're also thinking about, do the students really have these resources? Just because they're walking around with a phone in their hand doesn't mean that they have all of the resources or they even have the digital literacy to do what, they need. I think we need more data. I think we need more studies, and I think we need to be a little bit more thoughtful about making assumptions about what resource students do have both on and off campus.
Maybe just sort of like recontextualizing it for people, like historically is like, that's, I think, a big chunk of the reason why computer labs exist is like, okay, we're trying to make sure that students can, have all the suites of apps and things on a desktop computer and, have that available to them, and like kind of taking that sort of philosophy or that value of an institution into kind of the 21st century and, just being at this event, like, some people are like, oh, so what do you think about, the metaverse and, all these other sort of like really big forces that'll be affecting institutions in the years to come. It's like, sure, but there's still like digital equity gaps. So like there's going to be like sort of a hard stop eventually because there's a lot of students that don't have that reliable, high quality connectivity, and that, the work that you and, others are doing in this space, like it provides, such a like nimble sort of flexible solution versus it being, place bound obviously to like a computer lab and those sort of things. But like, I think it is, like you said, like where there's, very little data, because I think part of it is like maybe people not recognizing this is a more like systemic issue, that they're maybe just seeing the symptoms come up every once in a while where like, a faculty member maybe, generously being flexible about, submitting an assignment or joining a live session or those sort of things. But it's like the fact that that's coming up, if it's for the same student or many other students, it's because it's like they're having some unreliable, access to that, anymore a utility. Like it is like a required thing kind of like to exist as a human.
Yeah. And, today, here we are at the Times Higher Ed, Digital University Summit. And, we've heard a lot of talk about, faculty moving towards, changing the way they're teaching to be more, maybe, let's say, digitally conscious, right? But there's also an assumption that, and we know that, resources are provided to full-time tenured faculty members in colleges and universities, but not every college and university utilizes them, and there's also adjunct faculty that may not have the same access to technology and resources that, it's not always a level playing field even for all of our faculty members, and that's something that has kind of come out in conversations when we're having them with our instructional designers at colleges and universities across the country. And so, I think that as, IT infrastructure and as college universities think about the amount that colleges spend on their Wi-Fi and their IT infrastructure, We know that it's at least $750,000, if not more, up to $2.5 million annually on their Wi-Fi and their infrastructure on campus. If we think about yesterday's technology, which is Wi-Fi, and we turn that into tomorrow's technology, which is, connected devices that rely on wireless cellular connectivity, that means that people can work and learn from anywhere. That's the way that we're going to get about sort of some of this digital equity, because it doesn't require wires. It doesn't require to do trudging and all of that type of infrastructure. It's really in the air. And I think we need to think about tomorrow's technology a lot more. And especially when we're getting into thinking about metaversities and we're thinking about, equity in those areas, it is really much easier to achieve if we put our resources into those types of thinking instead of yesterday's thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mind's even going, and I don't know if you have any sort of thoughts on this, but like the kind of like hardware conversation, because I'm thinking like, like you might lend out sort of laptops and different things, but like, I guess like it's the idea that like a lot of students, like they're going to have a phone, they might have a tablet or something else. And like that it is the idea that like, thinking through like, 5G or whatever else, it's like, that's going to be more conducive to, facilitating, like you have to like for like a hotspot, like you've got to plug something into a laptop. So it's even just thinking where it's like, okay, if we can even like, I don't know, just try to come at it where it's like just that flexibility, I guess is kind of where my mind is going, like versus Wi-Fi and everything where it's like, I don't know, there's just like something there, I guess, that my brain is searching for of just sort of like the more ubiquity or,
ubiquitous connectivity, right? And it goes to, again, today's student. They want to learn from anywhere, and they will learn from anywhere. And we've had conversations with colleges who are spending millions of dollars to put Wi-Fi outside, so that their students can sit on the quad, and do their studies. But how much money would you save if you just worked with your local company, make sure that there's good coverage, and provide a connected device like an iPad or a tablet, or we're device agnostic here,
right.
It's the future, and it's the way that we need to think about it, and also thinking about equity and access those are the big things. But it's also an infrastructure conversation, and thinking about how does a college and university look to the future for their infrastructure, and what 5G can bring in terms of privatizing a data center for their college and university for research dollars. And there's a lot that can come with this technology that is accessible and wireless and will help us continue to get into the future for complete digital transformation, right? Yeah. We can't have digital transformation unless we're thinking about tomorrow's technology and not yesterday's.
Let's play a game. What keywords does your website rank for? What doesn't it rank for that you think it should? What are a few opportunities you could be winning on if you tweaked some website copy? Okay, how'd you do? Not great? That's okay. Because our friends at DD Agency want to answer all of those questions for you and then some. DD Agency is a higher ed specific marketing technology agency that has conducted countless SEO audits for colleges and universities across the country. In these audits, they detail where you currently rank, what you could be ranking for, exactly how copy should be tweaked on website pages, and much more. If this sounds like something you could benefit from, give those folks a ping and be sure to mention that Enrollify sent you to claim a 10% discount on any of their SEO offerings. Head on over to enrollify.org/DDASEO or simply follow the link in the show notes below. That will guarantee you a 10% discount off of your audit. Again, head on over to enrollify.org/DDASEO to learn more. Now, on to the show.
I guess that's what my brain is thinking of, is it's like, yeah, you might have things in some places of your life or something like, Wi-Fi and all that, but like, even that, again, like kind of, I think society is starting to move away from that, because that is still like place bound, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I could get on, Wi-Fi and Starbucks or something, but it's like, one, again, place bound, and they're not going to be open all the time. And then, two, like a lot of them, it's like, it's super slow. Like it is just like, it's not enough to like be able to like do your work efficiently. So to really kind of bring this home too, like I'm curious if you're able to share like, the impact that this is having, when students are able to get more reliable connectivity, just sort of like, what makes this so important and what's the impact that this type of work is having?
Yeah, we're working to get some long-term longitudinal data on this. Like I said, we've only been in this space for 2 years, and I haven't found really any research for higher ed specifically on, what providing digital resources, digital equity programs, how it really does impact student success, except we do have one academic year's data. So we worked with a community college who provided it was actually a phone that had preloaded resources for food, housing, health, including mental health resources, as well as all of the campus apps, the LMS and the tutoring center and all of that, loaded onto the phone as well. It was in an unlimited 5G hotspot. This was deployed to 2,100 students, or all of the first year students in the community college. Not the first year students, the iPEDS cohort, so the first time full-time to college. Those students who received those devices there was a 5% increase in the fall to spring retention from the previous year's cohort. Now, this is one data point, and it's short term, but the students who utilize the devices by measuring only the usage data on the hotspot, their course success rate was 100%. So giving students a resource that provided them ubiquitous coverage, that gave them resources at the touch of their fingers to be able to access resources they needed to be successful, ultimately did result in success. And so, we're looking to partner with schools this coming academic year, a private college and a large community college system that's going to provide connected devices to all of their first year students. And we're hoping to track those data to completion to see how it impacts the student success, course success rate, student retention, student engagement. And of course, those are quantitative data points, but also we want to get some qualitative data points about the student's experience and how they feel having, the university and the college provide these types of devices. And those were other data points I didn't mention about the previous college that did deploy the devices, was that the students felt cared for. They felt like the college was investing in them, and that they didn't feel like they would be scrambled without being able to do their work. So, I think both the qualitative and quantitative data on that isn't compelling, and we want more because we do believe that this is an important campaign, if you will, to improve in thinking about digital equity.
Yeah, and I think that's really awesome to hear, because I think that when I come at a lot of these sort of things, it's like making those investments so you're creating kind of like that culture of care so the student knows they kind of have the safety net, and that, again, sort of like a flexibility with it too, where like, certain things it's like, well, how many students you got on your campus? You're paying for that much. And it's like, usage may vary, but if it's just like, okay, you student A, like you need a device, you need connectivity, like we're going to give it to you. And that's, we can sort of, plan around that sort of, cost structure, I guess, of just like deploying it as needed versus like, I don't know why my mind was sort of like doubling back to this, because I think it's the intentionality around like, here's a device and it has, the campus app on it, or, whatever else and all this sort of thing. So like, I'm sure some people may remember, they'll remember certain school, and some have done it, or I'm thinking sometimes more of the University of Phoenix and different ones where they're just like, hey, like enrolled, we'll just like give you an iPad, or, there was like no, I'm sure, intentionality behind that, or even just any other institution where it's just like, yeah, we give all our students, iPads and all that. And it might have like software on it, but it's like, it's almost like they're probably missing the whole other sort of like student support side of it. Like they're making sure that they can engage academically, which is important, but then you kind of have to like, think through how are we engaging them, in the community.
We don't want to deploy devices. We want to deploy resources. And that is sort of the thought behind our, when we work with colleges and universities who do want to provide, connected devices. And when I say connected, it's because it's that you've ubiquitous coverage, whether or not they have Wi-Fi or have access to Wi-Fi. We will always work with faculty, staff, advisors, whomever the college, wants us to work with, to curate apps that we preload so that it is not a device, but it is in a resource. And so we are working with a college that's going to deploy these for all of their students in the fall of this year. Stay tuned for the press release on that. But we're working with the faculty during their faculty, back to campus development week, for lack of a better, what they call it, to make sure that they're going to be able to implement and utilize the resources that are available, because every student is going to have the same thing. So if I'm teaching an anatomy class, there are plenty of apps that are available to study and to, touch and play with, anatomy, that everybody can have, and they are able to do it together, whether they're in classroom, online, hybrid, high flex, whatever, because everybody has the same resource. And I think that in itself is going to be a really good learning experience. And I think for the most part, what my understanding is faculty are excited because they know that if they do want to use this type of technology, it's not going to limit anybody's ability to access it.
What we're giving is like a resource. Like, it's not just like, here's a device, good luck. Like it's it's a great sort of philosophy, and sort of like the intentionality is sort of what's resonating with me. So.
And I think about, again, if we think about tomorrow, right? I'm using yesterday and tomorrow, and I think is we've heard even at this conference about the importance of thinking about how VR and XR are going to augment teaching and learning. I mean, how we're already seeing it transforming some of that. I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when. And so if we're in the practice of thinking about, creating equity, resource equity, digital resource equity. So I think, it's about rethinking the model that we've created in higher ed is, and I think we've all heard this phrase at one point or another, but, the old assumption was that students need to be ready for higher education. But the truth is that higher education needs to be ready for the students, and whatever way they come in and whatever resources they come in, we should be there to help support them to be successful, because they made a hard step just to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a powerful mindset shift, I think, for institutional leaders to be, thinking through, like, let's do everything we can to kind of like, be ready for these students, be supportive of them, create that culture of care, and just have sort of a lot of different things at your disposal, whether it is, and I think that's certainly the starting point, like a device and connectivity, but then also, just everything else, tutoring and coaching, career support, all these sort of things. And then you can almost like build out from knowing, okay, like they're going to have the connectivity, the apps, the device, and this sort of thing, and kind of build out from there. But speaking of resources and everything, if there's anything that you want to share about this topic, the work that you all are doing, that we can direct people towards.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate this conversation, and I hope folks can see, like, this is a passion of T-Mobile, but it's also a personal passion of mine. And I want to say that right now, T-Mobile for Education in our higher education space wants to be a thought partner. We want to partner alongside colleges and universities to think about the best way to help address some of these issues. We certainly don't have all of the answers, but we do have resources. And so certainly we can be found at, on our website, and then you can just search for higher education or T-Mobile for Education, because we have some resources and some case studies of what we're thinking about doing. But also just reach out to us if you are thinking about how to partner. Public-private partnerships are really important these days, and we are happy to sit down and have conversations about what that might look like for campuses, even for one classroom, even just to start out to think about how we might be able to start a pilot or a demonstration project and then expand it. We're here to be a thought partner and solve some of these issues together.
Yeah, and folks will be able to likely find this session recorded later. But like one of the things that I said in a session that I was moderating earlier was like, start somewhere. Like that's just a big thing where it's like, some of the panelists were sharing anecdotes about how they, got started working in the space 25 years ago, and at least was sort of like some foundation, some sort of, frame of reference, or just sort of like part of their culture of thinking in this way. And I think, something that I'm going to keep repeating as many times as I can get out to conferences to say it is like just thinking with that like digital first mindset. Like you're going to have this, which, having an asset, a resource like this helps your on-ground students, your hybrid, your fully online. Like it's good for everybody. And it's just where I think, institutions need to go is be thinking with that kind of digital first mindset. And there's a lot of reasons why to do it. And especially this one for sure is closing these, digital equity gaps. But definitely a lot of great stuff on the website of folks you can check out. But as always, we give our guests the opportunity to wrap everything up with a final thought, call to action to finish this off here. So the floor is yours. How would you like to bring it all home?
Thank you. I think I'd just leave this thought is that, the big talk right now in higher education is digital transformation. And my question is to ponder, what does digital transformation mean if there is not equal access and equity digitally? So let T-Mobile for Education come and be a partner with you to think through that. And if we don't have the answers, we certainly have a lot of partners with our national reach to bring in and think through it with us. Yeah. So I appreciate this time. It's been a great conversation, and I certainly would love to follow up if you have any burning questions, or maybe a year from now when we have some more data. I'd love to share that too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's getting to the point too where I feel like I've talked to a lot of people who are just like, I'm probably going to have to like tap people on the shoulder to come back again, especially when it's like sort of checking in on a particular thing. But yeah, I mean, this is great stuff. And I think just a great, reminder in spaces like this. And I'm glad that I've been noticing some other people kind of bringing this up as like, okay, when we're talking about a lot of this stuff, like who is it going to be leaving behind? Like you have to sort of be considerate of how you're kind of widening the scope and kind of inclusivity of, all these various digital transformations that institutions are making. So, just thank you so much for your time and for hanging out. And so glad to do this in person.
It's been great. Thanks so much.
Hey, y'all, Zach here from Enrollify. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mickey Baines, Jeremy Tiers, Jaime Hunt, Corinne Myers, Jamie Gleason, and many, many more. You can learn more about the Enrollify Podcast Network at podcasts.enrollify.org. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. Find yours at podcasts.enrollify.org.